Hi, I'm Erin Barnes. I started as a music journalist at Westward and Denver Post. Moved into doing PR for record labels and bands for like 10 years. I'm going to age myself here. Um, and then I just kind of followed whatever I was interested in for PR. So I did PR for the Black Monarch, which is like a haunted brothel in a ghost town. You guys should check it out. It's a good haunted tourism site. And now I'm a senior PR manager for Meow Wolf. So, and I'm also kind of used a lot of my branding stuff on myself for my own writing career. So I can speak to that too.
Cool. I'm Corey Hazel. I got my start in Tucson, Arizona, working with Rialto Theater in marketing, and came back to Colorado where I grew up, and immediately joined 303 Magazine, went from intern to music editor, became a photographer and talent buyer with them, and then went on to manage bands like Neptune, Oxide Daisy, and Vinyl, and then joined Future Garden with Kyle Hartman, and we do artist development, branding, booking, and management. And yeah, it's kind of my whole, yeah.
Amazing. So for artists like me, I feel like oftentimes when it comes to PR and marketing, it feels a little inaccessible sometimes, right? It sort of feels like this other world. But I know the relationship between the people who are in both sides is so important. It really is a true collaboration. I guess for everyone here and for my sake, the idea of PR and marketing are related, but they are separate. Is that right? So do you want to offer kind of what the differences between those two things are?
PR versus marketing?
I always say PR is earned and marketing is paid.
Yeah,
So
that's a very easy.
PR is the earned like media placements you get and things like that, which adds a lot of credibility because people are writing about you because they care and because their opinion is that you're good or whatever it may be. And when you're looking at that as a consumer, when you see like a writer write about a band that they really liked just because they liked it, you take that a lot differently than you would if you saw an advertisement for that band because like they paid to have an ad there and things like that. So I think PR is definitely more of the credibility factor, whereas marketing is more of a visibility factor.
Yeah. I would also say that PR is a relationship with tastemakers, whereas marketing is really like coining a relationship with fans and real people as well. Yeah.
And they can work hand in hand. Like when you are at a larger company or organization, the publicist is going to work with the marketing department. It's just two different ways to accomplish similar things to reach people.
I'm curious what you find is the greatest misconception about either of those schools of thoughts or just generally about you.
Well, I feel like a lot of people think of PR as just trying to get people famous or trying to look cool, and that's why I really loved this panel. It calls it storytelling because I really like authentic PR where, if people write a story on one of my clients or on me, I want it to be nuanced and not just say complimentary things, but give a whole picture. Like, I prefer personally something that's really compelling, and for it to be compelling, there's sometimes, it's not always just like glowing. I don't think people trust only glowing reviews necessarily. So I also think people think of it as not being creative, and I think it's easier for me to see since I'm a writer. It's like an art form. So if you think about it as an extension of your art, it can be really creative.
Yeah, to kind of bounce off that, I think PR is a chance to tell your story or tell whatever your band's story is. Well, marketing is getting people's attention of like exposing, like, okay, this one moment, marketing usually focuses on like a specific thing that you're trying to put forth into an audience. Whereas like PR, you're telling like a bigger story. And there's a big line between them, because like a PR person is not going to market for you, and a marketer is not going to do PR for you.
And I would say another misconception that I hear a lot is that you can do it quickly and you can do it like one time. And I think that's just it's not recommended. First of all, it's never quick. I always say PR is a marathon, not a sprint. It's something that takes time if you're going to do it right. And secondly, like you can do it one time, sure, but that one flash in the pan is going to be there and gone, and you're not going to be able to leverage it. It's really a consistent effort that you have to make in order to like maintain control of your brand reputation and continue to be visible to people and continue like increasing your credibility in the industry and all of those things. So that's one thing I find myself explaining a lot in my line work. It's not quick and it's not a one-time thing. It's something that's slow and steady, consistent.
Ooh, I thought of another misconception too. You kind of inspired me. I love that too. I think of it like a relationship. It's like you have to put a lot into a relationship. It's ongoing. But also, I think a lot of musicians that I've worked with have thought that the people who are getting a lot of press are just like popular. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. I think sometimes those people are, but I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, they are hounding people. They're being like putting themselves out there more, and that's why they're getting it. And so if you're not getting the press, don't be discouraged by that, because a lot of the people who are actually just like shoving themselves in people's faces in a good way, but putting themselves out there more.
Kind of like you knock on the door until you're let in.
Yeah. Totally.
You just keep knocking.
Yeah. Politely.
Politely,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I think you're speaking to something that I am curious about, which is that maybe you see this with other artists when they come to you, sort of especially in the beginning, but there's this existential difficulty, right, of being an artist in this intersection of art and commerce, right?
Yeah.
Making money for what you do, for what you love. Do you have ideas, advice, or maybe even just reframes of how we can sort of reapproach this idea? Because the word branding, the word, these things have a lot of connotation, but I think we're all sort of actively working towards, deconstructing them. So do you have thoughts on that?
I have thoughts on branding that maybe will get us there. I'm still struggling with the business side myself too. But branding sounds so soulless, but ironically, I think it is kind of like your soul. If you think of it like it's an expression of your soul, it can be really profound, your branding. It's just a word for how do you express what is deep inside of you, visually or, in the way you live. Maybe you want to like have a cane and smoke a pipe, but like you can be really absurd, but like it can be a profound thing. It can be kind of like a way to you're expressing yourself through music. It can be another form of expression.
I agree with that, and I think too, especially in the branding piece, just being authentic to who you are. You don't have to fit in the box. You don't have to be like anybody else. You don't have to like follow this formula. But just like authentically be yourself and lean into that, and don't shy away from that. And I think that goes really far in branding and like telling your story, and then working to the PR angle is very telling your story too.
Yeah. And I would say it's kind of like you have to communicate what it is you are, what it is you do, in a way that people will buy into it. Like, to kind of bring it into commerce, it's like your band is your business as well. You don't have to think of it like that, but instead think of like how you would communicate what your band does to someone that's never heard of it, and like what that brand is that makes them connect and buy and believe you of like what you are putting into the world. And like when you're able to put those together, you're communicating efficiently and you're able to sell the idea of what your band represents.
And really, you got PR even if you're not like actively doing PR, because if anybody knows of your brand or knows of your music or anything, that is PR. Like that's like somebody else forming an opinion on your music and your artistry and your brand. based on what you've put out there. And so really it's just like a matter of like, are you going to control kind of the narrative, and are you going to be strategic about it, or are you just going to like slap it up there and like hope it's received well, you know?
Yeah. People perceive
yeah.
things so differently.
Yeah.
And the more that you share, the more people can connect to, like you were saying. I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't have anything to share. I'm just like a regular person. And you would be surprised how unique every person is. Like everybody has something within them that they think is totally normal that is actually extraordinary. And you don't really find that out until you start experimenting and trying different things. And social media is a good way to, try that. I didn't even realize I have like a differently wired brain until I started sharing more. So you just have to try things out.
Yeah, you just gotta figure out what it is that separates you. And there is something with every single person. And being able to like actively put that forward in a way that people can also receive it. I think if it's at a point where people will fully recognize it, then it makes sense. But if you're starting out the gate and you're just like, let me trademark this before it's really gotten legs, I think you're jumping the gun, because brands go through so many iterations before you like pinpoint it. You don't want to like jump the gun and trademark something that you're like, maybe this doesn't represent me anymore. Maybe this isn't fully what I'm about, or it was of the moment. I think giving it more time and fleshing it out and like letting people really connect and getting a following, and then like a following that supersedes Denver, a following that like has national like roots in it, and then I would be like, okay, maybe it's time to trademark that. I think if you can start I think if you can start seeing the signs of like it actually growing before it's showing active growth. I'm not saying it has to be like massive by the time you trademark it, but I think when you start to see it having like momentum on its own, like the first signs of momentum, I think that's when you should do it. And that's like the growth I'm talking about. It's expensive.
It's a process.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, actually, since all of you are, community members here in Denver, but also have a larger scope when it comes to ideas that are more, sort of national reaching. Can I ask you, like, what is the musical landscape right now of Denver, I think, versus what we're seeing nationally? Like, I just feel like there is so much talent that is just oozing out of this city, but I think it'll be helpful to hear a little bit about its relationship to a larger thing.
I'll let you guys take this
What's
one.
Denver like?
Corey, take that
I'm
one.
in the art world now.
I feel very passionate about this because I feel like so much of where Denver is right now, in terms of like a national presence of like who defines Denver, is not accurate in terms of like what's the most exciting things happening in Denver, and nor it is reflective of like who has the most talent or who is like really doing the steps that puts Denver on the map. I think a lot of Denver has been defined by like what has happened in the past 20 years and like what success looks like on that person. It's a lot of white male-fronted bands, usually in the folk category. Usually they have similar stories. Usually, like, some of them haven't even come up here, but that's usually who the industry like rallies behind out here. And whether they would admit it or not, they do. And there's like systems in place for those people they get leverage from that attention of what's come before. And you can even see it now with like how certain bands get more traction just because of like the way they look and like their association with like acts like, say, the Lumineers or Nathaniel Rateliff. Do I think those acts, they're talented? Do I think they're emblematic of where we are now? No. Do I think we should chase that? No. As like the next point of what Denver should look like and like what the next Denver Star should look like. Sorry.
Good answer.
That was heated.
That was good.
I think just like Denver has a very diverse music scene, and there's so much happening in it, and there's so many sounds coming out, and I think I think as a whole, people could do a better job of recognizing who's putting in the work and really focusing on their craft to be that next person and diversifying how they bring those people into bigger spaces.
So how do artists start to begin to tell their own stories?
I think, just starting with like the basic things of like what are your visuals looking like? Like, are they representative of you and of your music, and do they feel cohesive to what you're creating and putting out there? Like, how are you expressing yourself in your bio? Are you telling your story that way? That's a super basic way to tell your story, and like everyone should have one. If you don't, go get one. But yeah, like just like how are you explaining your story there? How are you talking to fans on social media? Like how are you sharing your music and behind the scenes and what inspired the music and all of those elements. Just like the basic areas that you're already probably in and probably working in, just like being intentional about opening up a little bit more and sharing a little bit more there and like really honing in on like what is your story. A lot of artists come to me and they're like, yeah, I make music, but I don't know what my story is or what makes me different, or like I don't know how to talk about this. I hear that a lot. And I think just like kind of sitting down with yourself and with the music you've made and like thinking about it for a minute and saying like, okay, why did I make this? And then just telling the stories behind of what you made. I think it'll naturally come to the surface and you'll see people resonate with it too, because most of what we create is relatable, to other people experiencing similar things. So yeah, I think just start with the basics. Like don't overthink it. Just start sharing and talking and seeing what comes up.
And if you actually write all of it down, it can really be grounding and centering, even to just do some soul searching and be like, what are 3 things that I'm really passionate about? Even if it has nothing to do with music, you would be surprised how much that shines through your music. Or it could shine through in like your branding, even if it's not in your music. You don't have to be strict about it. And then once you like kind of start opening up, you'll discover new things about yourself. And it can even help you. It's not just a superficial thing. Like I've done these branding questionnaires for bands before and for myself. And it actually helped to guide my creative career because I was like, oh, this is important to me. Why am I doing it this way? So if your branding is actually in line with like your heart, it's like so much more powerful, and it gives people more to grab onto.
I'm going to jump in on that and say actually that is so valuable, because when we start working with a client and an artist on like kind of just a general basis of like telling their artist story, we don't really ask about the music. We ask about all the other things in their life and like the things they're involved in and the things that they're passionate about and where they came from and all that. Like the music is honestly the last thing we talk about. So I think that's such a valuable piece of information to take back with you.
Yeah. It's like if your musician project was a movie, it's like what would it look and what would it feel like, and who would be like the characters that you would like to invite along to be a part of it. Like I think so much of it is immersing these people in this fantasy of like what your artistry is. And even if it's like based completely in real life and you may be one of those artists that does not have a boundary with like you're just sharing everything. When it comes to like how I approach branding is, how do you immerse people in this world you're trying to build? How do you build this world out and make it so when they think of you and think of like and see all the stuff that you're putting out there, it's emblematic of the full picture of what you are as an artist, or even who you want to be as an artist. You don't have to have all the answers, but sometimes just thinking about like, is this consistent with who I am? Is this consistent with who I want to be? And kind of approaching it that way.
Yeah, I love that you said immersive, obviously, because I'm from Meow Wolf.
Yeah.
But like when I was coming to this, I was like, yeah, PR is like 3-dimensional storytelling. That's what it is. It's like taking your story and trying to involve other people in it and reach other people. And you can get really creative with it too and have like PR stunts in the community. So it can be really fun.
I'd love to open it up to questions if anybody has.
What's your best way to educate people who might want to utilize your services but don't know when? Based off of just I can hustle, maybe get this thing done, or I need some greater guidance.
All right. I think that's a great question. Yeah, his question, if anybody didn't hear it, was we live in a DIY world. When do you, start utilizing people like us for services and things like that? I would say it's very case by case because there is a lot of things that you can do on your own, and there's a lot of things that I think in the beginning you need to do on your own just to have a clear understanding of like what your brand is and who you are, and not to have that swayed by anyone else or anything else, or just, to be really clear on yourself. So I think there's a lot you can do on your own. I think outsourcing is helpful when something is out of your scope of knowledge. So like if you just have no clue where to start, that is probably something that you should reach out to help on. And if you don't don't have the time to learn it, that's definitely a place. Or if you're wanting to make moves faster, because yes, you can do everything on your own, but can you do everything at a quality level on your own, number one? And number two, can you maintain that on a growing basis and like grow your brand and maintain the creative and do this and that and the other? Like, it's a full-time job to run any business, and as an artist you are a business, so at some point you will need people to come in alongside you and like help you run that quote business. So I think, if you're like wanting to make moves faster and grow faster, that's the time to outsource. And just, if you're just wanting to like, not have to shoulder the burden a lot on your own. We work with a lot of artists who are just like, I got in this because I want to create, and all of this stuff that I'm trying to juggle by myself takes away the time that I have to create, and I don't get to create anymore. And so like that's another time to outsource, is if you're at that point where you're DIYing it 100%, but you just can't do what you got in to do anymore. You can't create anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, I think of it as like we're like extra hands.
Yeah.
Like it is really helpful to know what you're doing, and I feel like a really good way to do it is if the person, the musician, is like knows what they're doing, but we're just extra hands. I would also say like stack things if possible. So if you don't have anything going on, don't hire a publicist to like create news for you.
Yes.
Because then you're just paying, and we're more like a megaphone. We can give you ideas, but we're not like going to create the news necessarily. It works best when you have like a tour and an album and like all these things to amplify. The more you have, the more we can amplify.
Yeah.
Amplify is a good word.
Yeah, I like the megaphone. Yeah, and that to be said too, like there are inevitably going to be seasons where there's a lot going on, and then like slower seasons. So it's also kind of a matter of strategizing, like how are you utilizing all these different elements that it takes to increase brand awareness and amplify your brand at the right time, because there is a right time for PR, it's not all the time. And there is a right time for marketing, and there is a right time for like all these other things. So if you're strategic about how you're using your time too, you can go really far in the DIY route if you're planning it out. And then too, outsourcing and getting extra hands on board just gives you more time and more ammunition for that, so.
Oh my gosh, there's way more than there was last time. Let's go here first, and then you're on deck.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone is. Yeah. Yeah.
So are you saying that like it gets kind of tiring to maintain your following and stuff? Yeah. Everything, absolutely. I think it's important to take breaks too, and like, there are ways, which you probably already know better than me, like about like spreading content out, stuff like that. But yeah, I would just encourage you to take breaks if you have to. And like, you can also kind of try to measure, like, is this actually translating to like sales, or, am I actually getting something out of this? Even if it's not, I wouldn't be discouraged, because I think that it does, in an all around way. But I don't know, I think it's important for us to kind of seek the inspiration and kind of like close things down when we're not feeling it, because then you'll be more productive. I don't know, I just kind of feel you. It's like, it's exhausting, like in this world. So I think it's okay to take a break if you need.
I think, like, it's be intentional. Like, in my personal life, I've always valued intentionality and slowness and things like that over everything else. And so, I think it's evident if you're not being intentional with your social platforms, and if you're just doing things to fit the algorithm, like, people will notice in some level. I think if you're intentional about it and you're doing what feels really authentic to you, and whether that's like, maybe you post a couple times a week, maybe you post once a week, maybe you post once a month, like, who knows, whatever feels natural to you. I think the real impact comes from the quality of what you're posting. So if you can't post quality things, and this is speaking specifically to social media, obviously, but if you can't like bring quality content to your fan base and maintain that posting schedule, then it's really not doing you much good. Whereas if you do a posting schedule or marketing schedule or whatever that feels more natural to you, more intentional to you, and every single time you're coming up to the plate, you're bringing something like quality driven and something that's impactful for your fans, I think that goes much farther than just like throwing things out there because the world tells us to,
I would also say, like, understanding how to capitalize on momentum.
Yeah.
Like, that's something we do really well with Neptune, is like, when we have things going on and when we don't have things going on, there's a very big difference in how posting looks like and how social media interaction looks like. When we're like off cycle and there's no album, there's no shows to like promote, we take a full step back from social media. We'll post we'll maintain, maintenance is key. It's like maybe a couple posts here and there, but like when it's maybe say it's UMS and you have like a couple shows lined up and you have like new music coming out, then we're ramping up, and then we're like trying to keep that momentum, try to keep it top of mind, and try to own that momentum and control it where it's going. And so it's like we're always top of mind, and you see, because like perception is everything, is like you want to see what's going on when it's going on. If nothing is going on, then you're posting and you're just doing like a ton of posts. You're not making the best of your situation.
Yeah, that goes kind of back to like that there's slow seasons and there's busy seasons. And that's in every facet of the industry. And it's just like learning those and learning how to utilize them, I think. Yeah.
And I also think it's a good time to like examine like what you want out of this. So, maybe you want to be a career musician. Maybe this is just for your own creative expression, and both are fine. So if you're just like, I'm just doing this for my own creative expression, then like, do it for yourself. Don't, do whatever you want.
I am hearing like a thread between what you're saying too, which is that there's a lot of power in the simplicity of a plan.
Yeah.
Because a plan will allow us to also have a little bit of buffer room between like this idea that like this is our work, this is ourselves. And if something's not working, we don't internalize it as like, I'm not working, or like I'm doing something wrong. It's like the plan isn't working, right? Like the data is not dating. So I do think that like that's something that we can all take away with this at whatever level, is that a plan is very important.
Yeah.
And also less emotional labor when you get to that point where you're like, I got to post today, and you're like, if you have a plan, it'll be much less sort of like intensive, right?
You can also prep that ahead of time with a plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not like at the moment like, oh my God, I have to post today.
Planning makes everything less overwhelming. Just plan everything. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I'll like sit down with a client and I'll be like, okay, here are the topics that you can speak to. And there's like 5 of them. and then I'll be able to brainstorm posts that are surrounding that. Or you kind of you can follow other feeds that are with those hashtags and just repost. Or so like whenever you start writing things in advance, it actually leads to more brainstorming. It can be really helpful. And then you can schedule things out far in advance, and then also leave some time for like your own like spur of the moment stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps to like, oh yeah, so basically she was asking like, whenever you send out a press release, it needs to be timely and relevant. It needs to be like a news story. And she's saying, what separates me and my project from everybody else? How do I make it timely and relevant, basically? And you can kind of try to plug into things that are happening around town too, like the UMS. Like I feel like as long as there is an event tied to it, you can say that it's news, and you would be surprised. Like there's always like there might be reporters who are looking for like 5 UMS artists to interview. So also like have faith that you do actually have something newsworthy, and you can also try to like plug into like, you know, I have a feminist book, so I have to like try to remember, oh, it's International Women's Day. I'm available if you need interviewees. Like a lot of times journalists are looking for feminists to interview for International Women's Day. So like just by putting yourself out there, you can look at marketing calendars, which, you know, since you're from marketing, they can be kind of cheesy, but you can try to plug into those too.
Yeah, and I think going past the music is the key. Like, it's not just the music, it's like your story as a person, you know, as an artist. And so a lot of artists that we work with, like we always ask, you know, great, it's great that you've got a new album, but like what is the story behind the album? And for a lot of people that might be like, you know, they struggled with mental health for a while, and these are the songs that they created during that time. And so we will look to mental health topics to talk about, not necessarily just like review this album, but like let's talk about this song and how it helps so and so through the, you know, like looking past the newsworthiness of I have a new release or I have a tour, and into the why behind what you're doing. Like it's always goes back to the why, and it always goes back to the story of who you are. And that may be similar, like each time you release music, there's a lot of artists that we work with that their music definitely has a thread, and they may have, you know, 3 albums over the span of like 3 or 4 years, 5 years, whatever, that all have the same themes, and like we're pitching kind of the same kind of news outlets and media outlets, but that's who they are, and that's the people that they're wanting to reach with their music. So like really look past just the timeliness aspect, although that's super great and like you should always do that, but like look past that and to also say like what's the story of my music and of me and of why I'm doing this. And there's always something. It may be hard to see like when you're in the weeds of it, but there's always something there that you can pull from and go with.
Yeah, if you put yourself in the writer's shoes, like think about it like if someone were to pick up this story on my song, what would they say? And like what story would they tell?
Or
like,
why would they listen?
Yeah, it wouldn't be just like, oh, she has a new release. There'd be more to it. And like you have to, I wouldn't say feed them words, but you have to feed them the why and feed them the hook of like, why should I spend this time? And like, what would I write about here?
And even like that even plays into your social media, you know, like why are people following you? Why are they going to go click your link on Spotify? You know, it's not because you have a new release, because like 120,000 people release every day. It's some crazy number like that. So it's like, you know, there's got to be a why other than I made this new thing and I want you to check it out. You know, there's got to be something behind it that resonates with other people. So, yeah.
All right, we have time for a couple more questions. So why don't we do 1 and then 2? I'm curious if you might be able to share a little bit more about the timing and pacing of ramping up like material on social media in advance of an event or an album release, and also like the timing coordination with reaching out to people
I would say pull yourself back from like the music itself and like see what you have, what you have to offer in terms of like assets. Like maybe you have a full album. Like what are the singles you're gonna be promoting? And then I would structure your plan of like, okay, I can drop this 6 weeks apart, be top of mind, and be like, okay, this is gonna reach the end of its cycle, probably maybe around here. Like, what is it people's attention spans like? How long are they actively gonna be like looking at this new song of mine and considering it new when all this other stuff is happening? And make sure you can still stay on top of mind in promoting the same project by, okay, boom, new single. Here comes another one. But like making sure there's enough time between it so it makes sense of like how people are gonna engage with it. Mm-hmm. Oh, they like it, they're really feeling it. Give it some more time, back up and be like, let this horse ride a little longer. I think it's just being perceptive and not thinking of it like, oh, I need to just like bust it out. But more so like, how can you tell your artistic story that leads to boom, album, or like boom, show, that they then can interact with you on that level of like, oh wow, they really were receptive to the music, they're really receptive to my story, it led to this thing. But also not just stopping cold turkey when you're done with the show. Be like, have some afterthought, have like follow-up, like almost like you were getting an interview. It's like, how would you follow up that interview? Would you give them a thank you? Would you like, how would you engage with them? You're gonna, like an employer, you're gonna engage with them on their socials. You're gonna like communicate with people. Like it's basically stretching out the thing you have and making it really count. If you spend a lot of time on your music, don't just like throw it out here and there. Make sure you give it the time of like a proper moment to land, to be received, and to keep building.
Yeah. That's such a good point about like not just letting things go out there, but using them as momentum to roll into the next thing. So like if you get some kind of award, then you can like use that to get something else, and you're always trying to be strategic like that. In terms of timing, you guys might have better ideas. I haven't worked with bands for like 5 to 7 years, but I will just say like, especially if you're thinking about like working with a publicist, as much time as possible, talk to them like way early, just because like if you're doing like an album campaign, if you're gonna go old school and like send it to like monthly magazines, you gotta give a lot of time.
Yeah, and I think like kind of the theme here is like, again, planning. I think it's really valuable what Corey said of, know what your assets are and like know how you're going to leverage them and go ahead and plan that out. And then have some flexibility in there for the ebb and flow so that if something does take off or if something's going really well, you can kind of marinate in that a little bit more and you're not just like on the strict schedule of X, Y, Z, this date, this date, this date. Like I think it's important to kind of ebb and flow as the content does. And to that being said, like there are some kind of like rules of thumb you can do to lay out that initial plan. Like Erin said, 100% reach out way in advance. Do not wait until the last minute, because a lot of what we do, I would say 80% of what we do is before the release ever even happens. And so the more time you have to work on that stuff, the better the outcome will be, because you've got more time to lead up to the publications, you've got more time to get exclusives, you've got time to preview it to the media. Whereas if you contact a PR firm and you're like, hey, my single drops next week, what can you do? It's going to be limited. So yeah, definitely have a lot of lead time. And then like just some general rules of thumb for spacing things out. 6 weeks in between releases is kind of the industry standard these days for Spotify algorithm and things like that. I would say 4 to 6 weeks. I lean towards 6 naturally. And then, if you've got an album, definitely have some lead-up singles. Don't just drop the whole album by itself and not have any kind of pre-promotion. Like, utilize your singles, utilize your strong songs, drop a couple of those. Waterfall campaign kind of style where you've got things building and building and building. Another great tool is music videos. A lot of people underestimate the power of a music video, but that can really extend the life of an album or a single or whatever it is you're promoting, because you can always drop that after and have another reason to talk about the album or, again, whatever you're promoting. So, like, don't underestimate the power of additional elements of content like that. Music videos, lyric videos, a tour announcement, like whatever that looks like for you individually. You can leverage each of those items. It doesn't all have to come at once.
Yeah.
So.
And if you're like paying for PR, I would say like you truly need to be ready.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna throw that money away
Yeah.
trying to scramble to make it work.
Yeah.
Because whoever's doing PR for you is gonna be like, we got 6 months.
Right.
And if you're scrambling to get your second video together a month like 4, you have like thrown that money out the window.
Yeah. You should definitely, like, if you're gonna work with someone else, have everything ready from the beginning and just say, like, here are my assets, like, please strategize these accordingly. And then lean to whoever you're working with to help you strategize that, because that's what you're paying them for. So, yeah, for sure.
And our last question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you should lean into whatever is you really like, that you gravitate towards, because that's what you're going to do consistently. So if that's an email newsletter, like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I think that social media networks change. And so I would say for anyone, you should have an email newsletter. It sounds really old school, but it's really helpful to have emails if, like,
Yeah.
you know, tomorrow, you know, Instagram shuts down or
We'd all be in trouble then, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think it's a great way to, like, engage deeper with your fan base and the fans that, like, care enough to sign up for a newsletter and give them a little bit more. That's a really great way, because when you're thinking about engagement, you're not just thinking about clicks and likes and things like that, but you're thinking about, like, how do I build a fan that's not just going to follow me on Instagram, but that's going to pre-save my music, and that's going to buy my merch, and that's going to buy a ticket to my show, and, like, things like that. And the way to do that is to take those extra steps and engage with them on a deeper level. And maybe the newsletter is somewhere where you share exclusive content and you share, like, you know, your deep inner thoughts about, like, what you wrote this song about, you know, that you don't necessarily share on social media. It's just kind of like a deeper dive into things. And I think that'll, like, really grow that engagement of your fan base on a better level. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have a plan of just like how you increase that and build upon it, then that's like key, because you can keep building people and you can
Yeah.
keep connecting with new people. You just don't want to stay stagnant with like, oh, I made my list.
Yeah.
And because it's not going to extend, especially with newsletter. Because like if you have no plan of like how you're going to attract more people, you're just going to be stuck in that same like body. And that's the
Yeah.
only thing that newsletters don't do, is like you have algorithms to advance social media, but you have to be on top of like expanding that yourself. If that's, yeah.
And
where
I
you
think
wanna
that
go.
goes back, Corey, to what you're saying. It goes back to, like, the quality element. Like, the newsletter is going to have to be quality content. It can't be the same thing you're putting on social media. It's got to be something different, and it's got to be something that they look forward to. And if you, like, look at it from a consumer perspective, like, if you're signed up for any newsletters as a fan or as a consumer, like, why'd you sign up for the newsletter? Was it, you know, maybe if it's a product, maybe it was for exclusive discounts or something like that. But, like, if you're signed up for a band's newsletter, why? Is it because you wanted to know about their tour dates first? Is it because you wanted to see that behind-the-scenes footage of the music video? Is it like what is it that you're getting there that you're not getting on social media? So, like, really think about the quality of what you're putting out. Don't just regurgitate what you're putting on social media, but have, like, a quality element. And then your question about cadence, too, like, I think that's going to really depend on how much quality content you have. Like, if you've got enough to do weekly or bi-weekly, great, do it. If you don't, save it and do it monthly. Like, I think the quality element is much more important than, like, how regular you're doing it. And there needs to be consistency, obviously, but, like, quality should be your first kind of thing that you're looking at for that.
Awesome. I would love to just end with, if there is like an artist, an organization, a label or something to which like you admire or excited about their marketing or their PR.
Yeah, I've got a few.
Something that we know we might be able to check out and learn from and kind of
Yeah.
take what we've been talking about.
Sure, I'll share mine. So there is an independent band I follow and adore called Johnny Swim. Their marketing is really great, and they did something really cool through the pandemic that kind of went on a deeper fan engagement level. that I think a lot of people missed out on. And that, you know, they do like backyard shows and things like that, but their marketing is something I'm always just kind of keeping an eye on. And the cool thing about them is they do take breaks, and they're not on socials all the time. And they've got like, I'm gonna like show my true fandom here, but they've got like 3 kids, and you know, like they're doing all this other life stuff. So they're not like posting 2-3 times a week. They're very intentional about how they spend their time, but their marketing is always very on point, to the point where I am, as a fan, like eager for what's next. And so I think they're a great band to check out. There's also a new artist. I say new. He's from the band Surfaces, but his name is Forrest Frank, and he's doing a solo project now. And his marketing has been really cool. He's really utilized the social media aspect, which I think is something we all have to adopt, whether we like it or not. And so he's like really utilized like the content driving marketing, rather than, he hasn't really done PR. He's really like done everything through social media. If I had to guess, probably some ads and things too, but like everything through social media primarily. And he's got like a cult following. So I look at his marketing a lot and just kind of like take notes. And that's something I would say, like, whoever you're following as a fan, take notes and emulate. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, if you're following them as a fan, they're doing something right. And so just kind of watch what they're doing and emulate in your own way.
Yeah, this might be kind of an obvious one, but Amanda Palmer of the Dresden Dolls. I mean, she's just so well known for doing it herself, putting herself out there. She's such a beautiful writer, and I feel like her or any other bands or artists that kind of do their own thing, it seems like they're just kind of, they know the system and they're making it work for them. Even like Radiohead or like Lana Del Rey, it's all across the board, but those are artists that to me just play by their own rules and they make it work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just seeing so much of the hype around like the Taylor Swift tour and just like how that was built, you get a good sense of like how brand starts to supersede and become like a lifestyle for people, and how you like build upon it year by year, release after release, and even just lifestyle things of like what's going on. It's like, oh, bad breakup, lean into that and make something that like is really gonna like gag people. Yeah. It's just like, it's really like amazing to see, and I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan at all, but it's just amazing to see what branding can do if you stick to it, understand what your brand is, and are able to maneuver that over the course of your career. And so like, even just the way she's able to like connect with her fans in a smaller way through emails and stuff, and just like how like deep the fans go to like uncover things. It's like she has complete control over her fandom it's a little parasocial, and that's a whole other thing. But it's really amazing to see how that was built up over time. And if you're an artist like starting out, I would look at how that transition happened and look at like the timelines, and like huge stars like Lady Gaga are the same. Same with like Arctic Monkeys. Like, it's just like so many of these bands that do get success, there's a thread of them being able to weave who they are, their identity, and to like utilize it over time to create something that's bigger than they even believed.
Yeah, that's such a good example.
Yeah.
Well, Corey, Erin, Don, thank you so much. Please let me give a round of applause. Thank you for everything today. Thank you for being here. Be safe, drink some water, take a break, and we'll see y'all later.